Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 versus 1 bot AI cast. We have got ourselves what should be a good one here today, as it's going to be Zozo taking on SmallBly, a Zerg bot known for being a little bit cheesy. You can tell by its name alone that SmallBly, it shares the name Bly with the former StarCraft 2 pro player, Bly, who was known for being incredibly cheesy, aggressive, coming up with new strategies, that kind of thing. And for this game, we're going to see how Zozo can handle something like an early game cheese. It's something that's probably a little bit lesser known to me, how Zozo reacts defensively, since it is such an aggressive bot. So we've got an even more aggressive bot looking to bring the pain in the early game. So ladies and gentlemen, before we get too far into this match, make sure to go ahead, click that like button if you haven't already. If we can get, oh gosh, I don't know, 1 like for every point on a drone, that would be amazing. Leave a comment down below saying more bots if you want to see more of these bot matches, more cheese if you want to see more shorter, cheesier games. And then, yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. This is the only place that you can get daily StarCraft 2 bot matches. And yeah, let's see, as we do have a probe running laps around the base of SmallBly, so Zozo is wholly aware that this cheese is coming. Now, getting information is different than doing something with information. As a bot author, you can program a bot to scout perfectly. However, if you don't program it to do anything, you might not have a ton of success. Zozo does have a battery going up. It's got 2 stalkers on the way, which is nice to see, and then a robo going up behind that. So it does have the makings of a nice early game defense here, if we take a look, because SmallBly's build is focused on utilizing roaches and burrow for their regen to try and overpower the enemy early on. Whereas Zozo has got a nice little wall with the battery, and the fact that there's a robo on the way will allow it to get out an observer. So it seems to be preparing for this situation just about perfectly. Now, lots of funny things can happen in bot matches as the first couple roaches move up the ramp. They're going to begin shooting at these stalkers. In other words, reducing the amount of energy that shield battery has. The stalkers are just using their superior range, though, to actually shoot the roaches. The roaches aren't even getting many shots on the stalkers until they pop out like that. We do have the first observer being produced by Zozo. So I think this is looking like just about a flawless hold, I want to say, unless something drastic happens. But all in all, the choice to stay on one base, to build the battery and just play it safe, is really nice. SmallBly doesn't unburrow these roaches either upon the presence of the observer, which is strange because in another game I cast of it, I believe that it did do that. Now, the question is, will SmallBly change path, or is it just throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at Zozo? I believe that's probably going to be the case. So while the game is not over, I think we may have our resolution already set up, unless SmallBly starts pooling up roaches or something for a big 1 base. But we are just having the roaches go in one at a time, so not the best result here. So we're going to fast forward and probably jump into another game, a bit of a short one. I do enjoy sort of showing off shorter matches now and then, as if we just cast long games, we only see what happens in the long games. And the cheesy games they're kind of like the great filter for the latter. If you want to have a top bot, you do have to deal with these kinds of cheesy shenanigans, which is easier said than done. But in this case, Zozo has done incredibly well. We're just fast forwarding as Zozo's like, no, I gotta stay home and be nice and safe, which is better than moving out recklessly, I suppose. Eventually SmallBly will just completely run out of resources on 1 base. But yeah, well done by Zozo. It does do a good job with those early defense. We didn't even need to see a probe pull, nothing like that. There's the GG. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so here we are into our second match of the day. It is going to be -0 taking on SmallBly. Again, SmallBly up against a very good top Protoss bot. And we'll just see if the cheese maybe has some more success in this game. It is going to be a bit of a tall order, however, there's lots of information to be gained, particularly maybe if you're programming a Protoss bot from watching matches like this. Similar to the first game, we have -0 going for a nice little probe scout. Again, if you don't probe scout in ZVP and you die to a rush, you probably deserve to die to the rush, as it's just essential to do. We do have the probe for -0 hanging out at the natural, being like, maybe looking to block a hatchery, something like that. And then it comes in, sees that there is an early pool, and will probably not go for an expansion. The Protoss does have its wall on the low ground, though, so this will definitely complicate things, as in the previous match, Zozo had the wall on the high ground, whereas -0 went for the low ground wall for ZVP, which does sort of indicate stylistic differences too. Zozo is a little bit less safe against probably like mid-game Ling Floods. As a result, -0 likes this wall because it does defend against those sort of mass Ling Floods, but also allow you to get up an expansion safely. The Protoss does print the tag, Roach Rush Scouted 112. So there's all the information for -0. It's just a matter of whether the author's implementation of a defense is proper, whether SmallBly can maybe do something to cause an upset, because, again, knowing is half the battle. There's always quirks in these bot games, and we do have a Stalker on the way. -0 does go for a battery. It's got a second pylon going up as well to make sure that these buildings won't be unpowered. SmallBly has got its first roaches on the way out. All in all, economically, everything looks good for SmallBly as well. It is just limited by its larva at this point in the game. Yes. As soon as that larva pops on out, it's pretty much being turned into a roach. It does research burrow prior to getting out the queen, which does mean that the burrow's done nice and timely. However, it also means that it is a little bit short on larva to keep producing these roaches. The attack is going to commence, though, and notably in this match, -0 has also not gone for a robo. So these roaches will actually get high efficiency from the fact they will be able to use that burrow to regain HP. The battery is already starting to lose lots of its energy as some of these units have absorbed some damage. We see a roach unburrows, eats some shots, and then immediately has to reburrow as a result. So since there's no observer for -0, it might just be relying on reaching a critical mass of stalkers to volley down the roaches prior to them being able to reburrow. We do have two roaches still trying to keep the pressure on. -0 actually begins shooting its own battery, so I guess it wants to be able to get out or something like that. Okay, so I guess it killed the battery to prioritize putting a stalker on hold in the door. That's a little bizarre. It's actually just sitting on top of these roaches. One of the stalkers actually gets caught. However, there is enough damage to secure a kill on one of the roaches. Then the stalker gets walled in at the gateway. Looks like a roach trying to path towards the main base thanks to that wall actually brings the stalkers from -0 to the high ground, allowing these roaches to keep hitting at the wall without being harassed. Now, they're still trying to poke in, but again, the stalker count is quite high. 7 stalkers to 10 roaches. These two roaches are still trying to path in incorrectly due to this wall. So there's a bit of a pathing fault in SmallBly. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe they'll fix themselves once that wall does get opened up. They do begin to head towards that door, which is quite nice, as that's going to provide a lot more firepower for the Zerg. Another one does still try and pad towards the wrong spot. -0's batteries don't have much energy. However, roaches are going down. We've seen 3 die, 4 die, as the stalker count is high enough, which is interesting to see because it means that the robo is not necessarily essential to deal with a roach rush on such low economy. A random queen moves on out. The stalkers are poking out a bit aggressively. I say that because there is a potential that -0 may kind of flank itself if it does move out too far due to these burrowed roaches. However, the Protoss, it is really getting kills on these roaches. And so even with the burrow, the roaches are not getting favorable engagements. I'm not sure. Yeah, one stalker, one zealot has died. I think we're pretty much at a hold condition here. As -0 throws up an extra gateway, it does have that robo on the way. All the roaches do unburrow. So it was a nice attempt from SmallBly, and it was a good example that there is multiple ways to deal with a cheese in StarCraft 2. These were two very different Protoss games. So I'll just go ahead and fast forward us a little bit into another match, as I believe this one is sealed. I do feel a little bit conflicted about casting these SmallBly games. I just clicked on LaughNgamez. The author did send one in, but I didn't cast it because it was just basically Eris bugging out. It was able to beat Eris. It did have some fancy moves in which it actually ran past like a spore crawler. So credit where credit is due there, but Eris had enough of its own roaches to kill the roaches in the main. It just didn't, so it was more of a fault from Eris. And so I was having a hard time hyping that up in a cast, whereas I feel like there's much more to learn in games like these. -0 does move out. It's got its third base up. It's got this one in the bag. We'll go ahead and check out another match after this one, though, just as the slaughter continues on. I'm not sure if this is the one build that SmallBly has or whether it will try other tactics. But that is going to be it. Okay, so here we are into our next game, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a different matchup, and this one will be SmallBly presumably trying to cheese out a Terran bot in a TVZ. And this is going to be an interesting one. I think these two bots are reasonably close on the ladder. WickedBot, a Terran bot that plays a bit of a macro bio style. And so we'll see whether it's going to potentially scout this out, something like that, or whether it might be in a bit of trouble against some roaches. As SmallBly is probably going for that build once again. So I'll just go ahead and say it. Ladies and gentlemen, click that like button if you enjoy shorter, cheesier games. Leave a comment down below and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support these casts, consider becoming a YouTube member. And big thanks to all the authors that do send in their replays to cast. And yeah, let's see here, as we do have a Roach Warren going on up for SmallBly. WickedBot, meanwhile, is going for a double Rax opener, so it's actually going to be 2 Rax Reapers, which will potentially set it up in a nice position to deal with this cheese. It's going to have 2 barracks worth of production. It's going to have an early Reaper out, which will scout the roaches. Now, that being said, a Reaper is not the quickest unit to build. Like, a Marine builds quicker than a Reaper. It takes time for the Reaper to get across the map. So by the time this Reaper is out and across the map, there's already going to be roaches building for SmallBly. This is the power of this build. It really punishes bots that do not work or scout. And so this might be a bit of a tricky one for the Blue Terran. There definitely is reactions that should be taken once this is scouted by WickedBot. It'll pretty much have to throw down a bunker right away. Make sure that wall stays up, repair the wall, all that good stuff. The first Reaper is moving on out. It's actually going for a scout checking for proxies, which is interesting. This is a little thing that you might want to consider changing on a per matchup basis. You're not ever really going to have a proxy hatchery, and I mean, not often. Very rarely. The Reaper does run into the roaches, though, so WickedBot is aware of this cheese. It can begin potentially kiting these. It's going to have to be careful, and this will be a great test for the pathing. Unfortunately, it does get backed into a corner and dies. WickedBot, meanwhile, is frantically trying to build a bunker on the low ground to secure a command center. This is very high risk and not what we need to see. We do have a situation update. Situation under attack. Rutrow. So maybe a little bit late to clue into that, because this bunker on the high ground could have been started quicker. There is a bunker on the low ground. WickedBot, meanwhile, does have Reapers skirmishing with the roaches, as the Reapers are staying alive, but they are eating shots, and that is not ideal, as every unit matters in a situation like this. There is an attempt for WickedBot to get up a bunker. The roaches, though, are shooting at the SCVs that are doing so. They have denied the bunker. The command center will finish, so WickedBot can afford to take a lot of damage. The Marines are doing a good job actually shooting at the roaches without really getting shot themselves. You can kind of exploit that high firing delay from the roaches. WickedBot says it needs detection due to the presence of those roaches. Meanwhile, the 2 Reapers on the map are now just 1 Reaper, so one of them has perished, and the roach count is starting to rise as none of them have actually been dying. Then WickedBot is struggling to spend all its money, as it is actually... yeah, it's struggling to spend all its money. The Marines try and pad towards the low ground, but the bunker is there. The depots raise, and they are just butchered. So I think SmallBly is going to have a victory in this game. WickedBot pulls some SCVs to try and repair the wall, but it's got nothing on the horizon. So we are going to have a victory for SmallBly, and it is cool to see that the Roach can be effective. The Roach Rush can be effective. It's a very powerful build to basically throw everything, even the Queen slow walking across the map. Although the 1 Reaper is keeping this one busy. Yeah, so WickedBot maybe could benefit from a quicker reaction to seeing something like that. It's very difficult as an author. It's like trying to sail a ship with a million holes in it, and you'll just keep finding new holes. Yeah. But well done to SmallBly, able to get that victory. And that is pretty much it for this one. Presumably the Queens walk across the map to kill any floating buildings. Although it would be interesting to know if WickedBot would actually eventually build, or pardon me, if SmallBly would actually build things like a spire to kill floating buildings, worst case. GG.